My daughter blocked me from her wedding, so I canceled the venue I paid for. After footing the $43,000 bill, I discovered she put my name on a security restricted list. She told the planner he won't make a scene, expecting my silent submission. But on the wedding day, as she arrived in her $3,800 gown, I did something so cold that the entire bridal party turned pale and motionless. My name is Dale Whitfield. I'm 54 years old. I spent 30 years working in commercial contracting, early mornings, long bids, the kind of work where you earn every dollar twice before it hits your account. My wife Carol and I built a decent life. Nothing flashy. A house we own, a truck that runs, enough left over to help the people we love. And for most of Ava's life, that's exactly what we did. We helped. I paid her college tuition in full. 4 years at a state university, $67,000 over 4 years. When she graduated and moved in with her boyfriend Brett, I helped cover 18 months of rent while they were getting on their feet. When she turned 22, Carol and I bought her a used Honda Civic because she needed a reliable car for work. I didn't keep a running tab. That's not why I'm listing these things now. I'm listing them because you need to understand what kind of relationship I thought we had and what kind of relationship we actually had. I should have seen it earlier. There were signs. Small ones at first. The kind you explain away because you love someone and you want to believe the best of them. Ava had a way of making every conversation about money move sideways. Whenever I brought up the wedding budget, asked about timelines, asked what Carol and I should expect, she'd redirect. We're still figuring it out, Dad. Joanna's handling everything. Don't stress about it. I told myself that was just wedding pressure. I was wrong. Then there was her 25th birthday dinner. Nice restaurant, the 4 of us. Carol wore a dress she liked, nothing unusual, and Ava looked at her across the table and said, loud enough for the next table to hear, that outfit is kind of embarrassing, honestly. Brett said nothing. Carol smiled and let it go, the way she always let things go. And 2 Christmases ago, I put $3,000 in an envelope toward the wedding fund, handed it to Ava at the table, watched her open it. She looked at it for a second and said, "Is that all?" I remember thinking, that's a strange reaction. I filed it away and moved on. That was a habit of mine. Filing things away. Moving on. Ava and Brett had their own apartment for 2 years before the wedding. In all that time, they never once invited us over for dinner. Every visit was on Ava's terms, at Ava's schedule, in a place of Ava's choosing. I told myself that was just how young couples were. I should have listened to what those silences were actually saying. 3 weeks before the wedding, Carol tried to log into the RSVP portal. It wasn't her idea to check. Joanna's office had sent a group message to the family weeks earlier asking guests to confirm dietary preferences through the not before a certain date. Routine stuff. Carol pulled up the link, typed in her email, and got a message she didn't expect. No active invitation on file. She tried my email. Same result. We both stood there in the kitchen staring at her laptop like we'd misread something. I told her it was probably a glitch. The knot has technical issues all the time. I'd read that somewhere. I picked up my phone and called Ava. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I texted her instead, kept it simple. "Hey, Carol tried to confirm through the portal and it's not showing your invitation. Can you check with Joanna?" That was a Tuesday. I didn't hear back until late Friday afternoon, almost 4 hours after I sent a follow-up. Her reply was 9 words. "The portal's been having issues. Don't worry about it. Joanna's handling everything." I read it twice. Then I put my phone down and told Carol it was sorted, because that's what I did. I took the easy answer and moved on. What I didn't think about, what I should have thought about, was the fact that Joanna had my email address. Not Carol's. Mine. Because I was the one who signed the venue contract 14 months earlier. I was the one who wired the deposit. If there was a guest list issue, a real one, Joanna's office would have contacted the contract holder directly. They never did. No email, no call, nothing. At the time, I wrote that off as an oversight. I told myself venues deal with hundreds of events, things slip through. I was giving everyone the benefit of the doubt, the way I always had. It was a glitch. Or so she wanted me to think. A week passed. No call from Joanna. No follow-up from Ava. Nothing. I told myself I was being patient. What I was actually being was avoidant. There's a difference, and I knew it even then. So on a Sunday evening, 11 days after the portal incident, I called Ava directly. Not a text this time. An actual phone call, the kind where you have to respond in real time and can't spend 4 hours crafting 9 words. She picked up on the third ring. Her voice was pleasant, that particular kind of pleasant that people use when they've already decided the conversation is going to be an inconvenience. I kept it simple. I told her, Carol, and I still hadn't received any formal invitation, that the portal issue never got resolved, and that I just wanted to know where things stood. 8 minutes. That's how long the call lasted. I remember checking the time when I hung up because Carol was waiting in the kitchen and I wanted to tell her something useful. Ava told me the seating was complicated. She and Brett wanted a more intimate vibe and were keeping it tight. She didn't say we were invited. She didn't say we weren't. She kept the conversation in that narrow corridor where nothing could be confirmed and nothing could be challenged. When I pressed gently, she exhaled the way you exhale at someone who is being unreasonable. Dad, it's not that deep. That was her answer. 5 words, delivered with the patience of someone who has decided they are the adult in the room. Before she hung up, she told me she'd have Joanna reach out to sort out any confusion. I thanked her. I don't know why I thanked her. 2 weeks went by. The phone never rang. Carol had been quiet through all of this. Patient, the way she's always patient, giving Ava room the way we'd always given Ava room. But that Tuesday night, after I told her about the call, something shifted. She didn't say much at first. She went to her laptop and opened her email, every wedding-related message going back 8 months. What she found, or rather what she didn't find, was the thing that finally made the picture clear. No formal invitation, no follow-up from Joanna's office. No venue details, no RSVP confirmation, no +1 coordination. What she had was one group text, a save-the-date blast sent to the entire extended family 11 months ago, and then silence. Most people get an invitation in the mail, Dale, she said. We got a group text and then nothing. Then she mentioned the Facebook photo. Brett's parents, Fletcher and Delia Hargrove, had posted 3 weeks earlier. The two of them dressed up, standing inside what looked like a reception hall, smiling at the camera. A venue walkthrough. We were never invited to that either. Carol closed her laptop and looked at me across the kitchen table. Her voice was completely steady when she said it. She spent your money and didn't invite you to spend it at. I didn't have an answer for that. Because she was right, and somewhere underneath all the excuses I'd been making, I'd already known it. I didn't call Ava again. I went around her. I still had the original venue contract in my email, a PDF I'd signed and returned 14 months earlier. $18,500 for the Whitmore Event Center on Carver Boulevard, with my name on line 1 as the contract holder. If anyone was going to give me a straight answer about what was happening with this guest list, it was the venue, not my daughter. So I composed a short email to their coordinator, identified myself by name and contract number, and asked a simple question. Could she confirm that Carol and I were included in the current event arrangements? Her reply came the next morning. Polite, professional, warm. She thanked me for reaching out, confirmed the event details were on track, and said she would make sure my daughter's preferences regarding the guest access list were honored. Guest access list. I read that phrase 3 times. It isn't standard hospitality language. You don't send that line to a father asking whether he's attending his daughter's wedding unless someone has already given specific instructions about who gets through the door. I forwarded the email to Carol without comment. We looked at each other, and neither of us said anything for a long moment. Then I picked up my phone and called Joanna Voss directly. Joanna answered on the second ring. Her voice was bright, organized, the voice of someone who manages 15 events at once and keeps them all in separate compartments. I could tell from her tone that she thought this was a logistics call. I let her settle into that assumption for about 30 seconds before I asked her about the guest access list language in the coordinator's email. There was a pause. Not long. Maybe 2 seconds. But I heard it. I was under the impression, she said carefully, that those arrangements had been discussed as a family. Then she pivoted smoothly, professionally back to logistics. Confirmed the timeline, mentioned something about the florist, asked if I had questions about the rehearsal dinner billing. The call ended 4 minutes and 20 seconds after it started. I know because I checked my phone immediately after hanging up and wrote her exact words on the back of an envelope sitting on the kitchen counter. I still have that envelope. Those arrangements had been discussed as a family. That was what she said. No such discussion had ever taken place. Ava had told her wedding planner that her parents were informed and consenting. She had built the entire thing on an assumption that I would stay quiet, stay patient, keep filing things away and moving on the way I always did. Before she hung up, Joanna mentioned almost in passing that she had sent a revised guest list confirmation to Ava's email 3 weeks earlier. A document, a paper trail, it existed somewhere, and my name was not on it. There was a revised guest list, and I was not on it. That evening, I sent Joanna a formal email. Short, direct, no room for interpretation. I identified myself as the contract holder for the Whitmore Event Center booking, referenced my contract number, and requested a copy of all written communications related to the guest access list for the event. I wasn't asking as a father. I was asking as the man whose name was on line 1 of an $18,000 contract. Those are two different kinds of standing, and I wanted Joanna to understand which one I was invoking. She replied the following morning. Her email was brief. She said she had consulted with her business partner and was forwarding the relevant correspondence in the interest of transparency. I think she was protecting herself. I don't blame her for that. What she sent me was an 11-message email chain spanning 6 weeks. I opened it at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that went cold before I finished reading. The first relevant message was from Ava to Joanna, dated 9 weeks before the wedding. I'm going to read it exactly as it was written, because the words matter. Hi, Joanna. Just confirming my parents, Dale and Carol Whitfield, are not to be included on the guest list or given venue access. They are aware of this and have agreed to celebrate separately with us after the honeymoon. Please make sure security has their names on the restricted list. She used my full last name. She didn't write my dad. She wrote Dale Whitfield, spelled out, the way you write a name when you want to make absolutely sure the right person gets blocked. She had thought about this carefully. She had drafted it, probably revised it, and sent it. And then she had cashed my checks and said nothing. That was the moment the word I'd been avoiding finally landed. Not anger, not betrayal, exactly. Just the clean, flat recognition of entitlement in its purest form. She had taken everything I offered and built a wall with it. I kept reading. 2 weeks after Ava's first email, Joanna had sent a follow-up asking her to reconfirm the restriction. Venue policy, Joanna explained, required the contract holder to be notified of any changes to venue access. It was a reasonable ask. A professional one. Ava's reply was 4 words and a period. I'll handle it. He won't make a scene. She never handled it. She never notified me. She had looked at 27 years of my patience, my habit of filing things away and moving on, and she had made a calculation. She decided I was safe to ignore. That I would stay quiet, stay grateful for whatever scraps of relationship she offered, and keep footing the bill without asking what I was paying for. I sat in the car for a long time after that. I hadn't planned to. I'd driven home from a hardware store run when Joanna's email came through on my phone, and I pulled into the driveway and just stopped. Carol must have seen me through the window because she came outside a few minutes later and got in the passenger seat without asking any questions. I handed her my phone. She read the whole chain without saying a word. When she finished, she set the phone on the center console and looked straight ahead through the windshield. We sat there together for 40 minutes. The engine was off. Neither of us cried. I think that surprised me most. I kept waiting for something to break open, and it never did. What I felt instead was a kind of absolute stillness. The kind that comes after a decision has already been made without you quite noticing it. She told the planner I wouldn't make a scene. She had no idea what I was about to do. I didn't do anything that night. Or the next morning. I'm deliberate by nature. 30 years in commercial contracting will do that to you. You learn not to make irreversible decisions while you're still inside the emotion. So I waited until the feeling settled, and then I went back to the contract. I'd kept the original PDF in a folder I use for large purchases, insurance documents, the house deed, things that matter. I opened it at the kitchen table on a Wednesday evening and read through every clause. What I was looking for was simple. Did I have the legal right to cancel a booking I had signed and paid for, even if the event was for someone else? The answer was on page 3. The contract holder retains right of cancellation with written notice no fewer than 7 days prior to the event date. My name was the sole signatory. There was no secondary holder, no co-signer, no clause transferring rights to the bride or groom. The wedding was 11 days away. I was inside the window. I also checked the catering deposit. That had been paid separately, on my credit card, through a different vendor. Their cancellation policy allowed a full refund if notice was given within 10 days of the event. 11 days. I was inside that window too. I don't know if Ava had ever read either of those contracts. I suspect she hadn't. She'd been too busy assuming I never would either. I sat with it for another day. I wanted to be sure I wasn't acting out of anger, Because anger makes you sloppy, and I couldn't afford to be sloppy. I needed to know I was right not just emotionally, but factually. So I called my brother Garrett. Garrett has known Ava her whole life. He was at her college graduation. He helped me move furniture into her first apartment. If anyone was going to find a reasonable explanation I'd missed, it was him. I read him both emails over the phone, Ava's original message to Joanna, and the follow-up where she said I wouldn't make a scene without framing them, without telling him what I was planning. I just read them out loud and waited. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "She put your name on a restricted list, Dale. She didn't just forget to invite you." I told him I was trying to consider whether there was context I didn't have, whether there was some reason, a real one, a serious one, that Ava had made this decision and communicated it badly. Garrett didn't dismiss the question. He thought about it. Then he said something that I've turned over in my mind many times since. Even if there was a reason, he said, she spent your money while making it. That's the part that tells you everything. He was right. There was no version of this where that was okay. No explanation, no context, no misunderstanding that would make it acceptable to place your father's name on a security restriction list while cashing his checks and saying nothing. The two things couldn't coexist. Either she respected me enough to have an honest conversation, or she didn't. The email to Joanna had already answered that question 9 weeks before I ever read it. The next morning, I picked up my phone and called the Whitmore Event Center at 8:17. I gave the coordinator my name and my contract number. I told her I needed to cancel the booking effective immediately and requested written confirmation by email. She put me on hold for 4 minutes. I assumed she was verifying my standing as the contract holder, which she had every right to do. When she came back on the line, she confirmed the cancellation. The booking was voided. The confirmation would arrive within the hour. I didn't call Ava first. I didn't warn her. I didn't ask for an explanation or give her a chance to talk me out of it or reframe what she'd done. I had the emails. I had the contract. I had spent 27 years giving her the benefit of the doubt, and she had spent 9 weeks making sure I was blocked from the event I was funding. I was done extending grace that wasn't being returned. An hour later, the confirmation landed in my inbox. I forwarded it to Ava with no subject line and no message. The wedding was scheduled for 4 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. Carol and I spent that morning the way we'd spent most mornings that week, quietly, at home, not talking about it more than we needed to. We had coffee. I read the news. She worked in the garden for a while. There was nothing left to plan and nothing left to decide, so we just existed in the house and let the day move at its own pace. At 3:52, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A text from my cousin Reed, 3 words, Dale. The doors. I set my phone face down and didn't pick it up again for 20 minutes. What I know about the next hour, I learned secondhand from Reed, from Joanna's follow-up email, and from one other source I'll get to in a moment. I wasn't there. I want to be clear about that. I was at home. I had made my decision 10 days earlier with a phone call and a forwarded email, and I had no interest in standing on a sidewalk watching the consequences arrive. That wasn't the point. The point was already made. By 3:45, roughly 40 guests had gathered outside the Whitmore Event Center on Carver Boulevard. They were dressed for wedding suits, formal dresses, people who had traveled and made arrangements, and taken the day off work. The venue doors were closed. Security was present and the booking was confirmed as voided in the system. There was no event to enter. The coordinator who had emailed me so warmly 10 days earlier was now the person explaining to confused guests that the reservation had been canceled by the contract holder and the facility was unavailable for the evening. Nobody knew who the contract holder was. Not yet. Ava arrived at 4:03. Reed described it to me later, in careful, neutral language, the way you describe something you witnessed and aren't sure how to characterize. She was in her dress, the $3,800 gown Carol had helped pay for, and she had a small bridal party behind her and Brett Hargrove at her side in a rented tuxedo. She walked up to the entrance, saw the doors, saw the security personnel, and stopped. Then she started talking. She told the security guard the cancellation was a mistake. She told him her father had no right to void the booking. She told him to call the coordinator, call the manager, call whoever was necessary to get the doors open. The guard was professional about it. He'd clearly been briefed. He produced the cancellation paperwork and showed her the name on line 1 of the original contract. Dale Whitfield. Same name on the cancellation request. Everything in order. Joanna Voss was already on site. She had arrived early to oversee setup and was still there when the cancellation came through that morning. which meant she had spent the day managing a situation she hadn't created. She told me later, in the follow-up email she sent 2 days after the event, that she had stepped to one side and called her business partner to document everything in real time. That was the right instinct. Whatever happened on that sidewalk, Joanna made sure there was a record of it. Ava called me at 4:11. I know the exact time because my phone logged it, and I looked at the log afterward. I let it ring twice, then I answered. She was not calm. I was. That asymmetry, I think, was the thing that made the conversation as short as it was. She told me I had no right. She told me I was controlling. She said that word twice, controlling with the particular force of someone who has been saving it, who has decided in advance that it's the argument that ends the argument. She said I was ruining her life. Her voice was loud enough that Carol, standing across the kitchen, could hear it through the phone. I waited until she paused for breath. Then I said, I was footing the bill, Ava, not funding a party I was banned from attending. I said it once. I didn't repeat it. I didn't elaborate. She said I was doing this to punish her. I told her I had the emails, all 11 of them, and that I knew exactly what she had written to Joanna 9 weeks before the wedding. Another pause, shorter this time. The kind of pause that happens when someone realizes the thing they believed was hidden is no longer hidden. Then I told her I considered this the last conversation we would be having for the foreseeable future. She called me controlling one more time. I told her I had learned that word from her. And then I ended the call. 2 minutes and 40 seconds. That was the whole thing. What happened on the sidewalk after that, I heard about through Reed and through Joanna's email. Brett's father, Fletcher Hargrove, pulled Brett aside near the entrance. His mother Delia had been standing with a group of guests when Joanna, still documenting, confirmed to the small cluster around her that the contract holder had exercised his right to cancel. Delia Hargrove looked at her husband. Then she turned and walked to her car without saying a word. Reed told me that Brett watched her go and didn't follow. Joanna's email to me, sent 2 days later, was 3 sentences. She said she wanted me to know that Brett's mother had said, quietly, to no one in particular. We didn't know. That was it. 3 words from a woman I had never met, standing outside a locked building in a formal dress, and somehow that was the thing that finally made my chest loosen. They didn't know. But now they did. The week after the wedding that didn't happen was the quietest week I'd had in years. Ava texted me 4 days later. I saw the notification come in while I was eating lunch and I finished my sandwich before I picked up the phone. Her message was 11 words. I hope you're happy. You ruined my life. I read it once. I didn't reply. I didn't show it to Carol. I sat with it for a moment the way you sit with something that used to have power over you and doesn't anymore, and then I deleted the thread. A mutual relative called 2 days after that, one of Carol's cousins, well-meaning, the kind of person who believes every family problem is a misunderstanding waiting to be resolved. She asked if I'd be willing to talk to Ava. I told her, politely, that I wasn't. She said she thought I was being too hard. I told her I understood why it looked that way. Then I wished her well and ended the call. No anger, no explanation beyond what was necessary. That was what no contact actually looked like in practice, not a dramatic door slam. Just a quiet, consistent boundary held without negotiation. Brett and Ava did get married. I don't know the details and I didn't ask. I assumed they found another venue or rented a hall somewhere and made it work. That was their business, not mine. I had stopped being in the business of making Ava's life easier at my own expense, and that decision did not have an exception clause. 11 days after the cancellation, the catering refund landed in my account. $4,200, back exactly where it came from. Carol saw the notification and looked at me across the breakfast table. She didn't say anything, just raised her eyebrows slightly, and I almost smiled for the first time in 2 weeks. We used part of it to book a week in Asheville, North Carolina, a place we'd been talking about visiting for years and had never gotten around to. We went in the fall. The leaves were turning. It was the first real vacation we'd taken in 3 years, and we spent most of it walking and eating well and not talking about Ava unless we felt like it, which wasn't often. I've thought a lot, in the months since, about the $43,000. Not with bitterness, I want to be clear about that. I don't lie awake running the numbers, but I think about what that money represented, which was a belief I held for a long time. That generosity was a language Ava understood, that if I kept showing up and kept providing and kept extending grace, she would eventually meet me somewhere in the middle. The email chain she sent to Joanna told me everything I needed to know about how wrong I was. She hadn't been moving toward the middle. She'd been moving in the opposite direction the whole time, and I'd been funding the trip. You can love someone and still refuse to be the floor they walk on. Those two things are not the same. It took me 54 years and a locked venue door to understand that clearly, but I understand it now, and I am not going back.